Hello and welcome to the BAM Cam podcast with your hosts, Jack Burnette and Allison Castellano. I'm Wendy McConnell. I have to say, Allison, she's looking really different today.
She is. We have replaced Allison today with a friend of ours, and he's a friend of Allison's as well, and Adrian's. But we are going to be talking, and I brought my friend JT Miller today, who happens to be one of the coaches at Iron Tribe Fitness. Listeners to the podcast may remember earlier this year we had Karen Broadwater, who is president of Iron Tribe, on our podcast to talk about all the wonderful benefits that Iron Tribe brings. But today we're going to talk about another aspect of wellness besides just physical wellness. And because JT and I share something in common, but to kind of refresh, for listeners of the podcast, we really advocate pursuing a life of wellness on multiple fronts. Not only financial wellness, which obviously at Eater Financial Wellness, that's what we do to try to help bring people into a realm of financial wellness. But we really advocate having wellness on multiple dimensions: physical wellness, spiritual wellness, emotional wellness, because in order to have peace and happiness in your life, we believe that having as much wellness in your life will help to promote that. So JT, my friend, is one of our coaches at Iron Tribe, and he is an excellent coach, I might add. He can really help if you're wanting to perfect any of your lifts or any other movements in the gym. He's outstanding with that. And as a matter of fact, we have jerks today on our workout. I'm looking forward to that this afternoon, working on that. I am not a master of the split jerk. It's difficult for me to get under it, which many people struggle with that. But I'm going to be working on that this afternoon. JT works in the mornings, so I won't see him this afternoon.
You don't see me often. I usually see you on Saturdays.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's good. Also, listeners of the podcast know that I've been on a sobriety journey for a number of years. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode today is on October 28th, I'll be celebrating my 27th year of sobriety. October 28th, 1997 was the last drink I took. And it changed my life. And JT and I share this in common. We're both on recovery journeys. And in talking with a number of friends and acquaintances that I have that are on sobriety journeys, I find that so many of the things that prompted people to go into sobriety or to pursue that are different. Everybody has different reasons that they want to do that. Mine was on October 28th, 1997. I was on a business trip, and I had gone out to a bar and was driving back to my hotel and was arrested for DUI literally 100 yards from my hotel.
That's how it usually happens.
Yeah. So it was at the time, it seemed like the worst thing that could have happened to me. It truly was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, because it got my attention to something that I needed to do. And it was very, very difficult to have to tell my beautiful wife, Barbara, what had happened. But I pursued a recovery journey from that point forward, and my life was changed forever. And so now I think it's one of the best things that ever happened. And I often wonder, had I not been stopped, if I'd made it back to the hotel, what my life would have been like. So it really was a blessing in disguise. It didn't feel like it at the time, but it was. So JT, what prompted you to pursue a life of sobriety?
Let's see. I think mostly it was necessity. I was physically ill from the drugs and the alcohol that I was doing. I had been able to hide it for years, and I had gotten to a place where it was obvious that something was going on. Like if you had not seen me for a while, you would have wondered if I had cancer or something. I looked terrible. And I think it was like a perfect storm of things, but I had a herniated disc in my neck and couldn't go to work, was stuck at home, and was just in this terrible place. And I woke up one morning and was like, I'm going to die if I keep going the way that I'm going. And I did not know what was next. It was a very
that crossroads
time.
Is scary.
Oh,
isn't
it's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying, because you've like learned how to manage and live all these different ways, and it's like where I was in my drinking and use was so severe that I didn't know if I could stop. But I just called my mom and was like, "Hey, I need to go somewhere today, and if I don't, I probably will lie to you tomorrow about calling right now." So I think for me, it really was change, or I'm not going to be here much longer.
Right. I think that everyone that has pursued, that I know that has pursued a sobriety journey out of necessity of some sort, had a really low point like that you almost feel like you don't have any other choice.
Yeah.
You have to do this. You have to do it now. And if you don't seize the opportunity at that moment,
it's not going to work.
It won't work.
Yeah.
And so it's almost a perfect timing type of situation that you just and you have to do it. And it is a terrifying moment.
It's awful.
I was so afraid. I was afraid that if I quit drinking, I was afraid if I quit drinking, my friends wouldn't want to be friends with me anymore. I was afraid if I didn't quit drinking that I might lose my family or job. And it's just a terrifying thing. And the fact of the matter is, alcoholism and addiction plays with your mind in such a way that, first of all, alcoholics are great liars. And the people they lie to the best
are the people that love us the most.
And ourselves.
Yeah.
And so all these lies and everything are in our heads and they're messing with us more than they are even the people around us.
Well, I think the biggest lie that I believed was that I couldn't live without it.
Yeah.
That I couldn't manage like who I was without it, and really didn't know who I was without it anyway. But I definitely couldn't see my life without. It was like someone was once telling me, they were like, it's like losing a best friend when you first quit. And it is. It's like this thing you've had next to you your entire life, this sense of security and control and like these good feelings. And, you've related it to everything in your life. It's like a kid's security blanket in a way. And you're just, ripped away from it and you don't know how to function. But I always knew that it was possible. But I think, like you said, I had to I don't think everyone has to get to that low point. I think people can just be have an intervention, which I think are great. Interventions are awesome. Have interventions and their family gets together and they're like, hey, you need to go to treatment. And they go to treatment. They have a wonderful experience and their life changes. But I'm incredibly stubborn and I had to try moving and I had to switch drugs and see if that worked. And I had to, buy little shot glasses to fill up and measure out how much alcohol I had at different points in the day and thought that might work. But I just had to try all these ways before I got to this point where I had nothing else to try. And I think that's the place that really changed me.
Mm-hmm. I had tried cutting back.
Yeah. Oh,
that was the biggest lie.
Yeah.
Of
Tons
all.
of times. That's like one of my favorite lines in Bill's story, where he's like, I'll just stop drinking hard liquor. And it's like, I remember that being like the best idea that I had at the time. I was like, man, I need to stop drinking Jameson in the morning. Like that's going to be the answer. But you can't drink enough beer to get the same effect. So that lasted like a day and a half.
You know, and the thing is, and I don't know how old you were when you started, drinking or using, but I was 14.
I was 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by the time I went off to college, I had really perfected the art of drinking.
Yeah.
And probably, in college, probably drank at least 5 or 6 days a week. And 2 to 4 of those days was to drunkenness.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think by age 16 and 17, I was like who I am now as a coach. I feel like I might have been that way for people that I was partying with. I'd be like, if you take this drug and drink this much, and this is like, this combo is the best for the for the best feeling. Like, this is the way that you're going to feel the best. And so that was like, it's not all just, like this kid's being terrible. So it was genuinely me trying to like figure out how to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I had been in therapy, and they were like, hey, take this pill, it's going to help you. And there was definitely a sense of like, when I took opiates for the first time, that it was like, hey, this is fixing something wrong with me.
Right.
And like, I want this all the time. It wasn't just this, I'm really messed up right now.
Right.
Like, and I think that for some people it's, when they do these things, it's like, I feel so woozy and silly and like I could never do that. But when I was using and drinking, I felt great and clear-headed, or at least I thought I did. It wasn't like I was just this dude stumbling around all the time. Like, I was working in fitness at one point, and I worked for a construction company. Like, I was doing very high task things. I was just drinking and drugs at the time.
And most people that are alcoholics and addicts find a way to be quite functional.
Yeah.
And have productive jobs, and they have productive lives, and they have, family lives and that sort of thing. But at the same time, they're balancing out a lie.
Yeah.
Often, and you end up being deceitful to those around you and to yourself. And it reminds me when I was a kid, I think there used to be a lot of variety shows on television, and an act that was very common to see is somebody that would be on there, and they'd have all these plates spinning on these little spindles and that sort of thing. And he'd run around from plate to plate, keeping them all spinning, trying to keep them all from crashing on the ground. And that's what I felt like my life was like.
Yeah.
Is constantly trying to keep all the plates spinning, and to have a good job, and to make good money, and to try to be a good father, and to be a good husband, and do all this kind of stuff. And in reality, a lot of it was just
fake.
Yeah, it was all fake.
Yeah, it's all fake.
And in reality, when we were deciding whether or not we were going to go somewhere for dinner, I wanted to rule out the place that didn't serve alcohol.
Oh, that's a terrible conversation, because you can't say that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't say that to your partner. You're like, I want to go to whatever it is, some burger joint. And you're like, burgers are great, but that taco place you're like, been there 3 times that week, and you don't actually even want tacos, but you're like, I can't go to the burger place. There's no alcohol there.
Yeah.
Like, that's a terrible experience.
But they serve tequila at the other place.
Yeah. Which you're going to have 3 shots of.
And I know it's kind of crazy. So balancing and living that lie. And so to me, it was, going to rehab, which I did on an outpatient basis, but I went through a rehab program and it was a 12-step recovery program. And then I went to AA meetings for a number of years, and until I found that they were depressing. But I probably went for 4 or 5 years at least to AA meetings, and I'd go to one today if I felt like I needed to.
Yeah.
But recovery, while initially was very scary because I wasn't sure I could trust myself. But once
It's a good place to be at the beginning.
It is, and I used to. My first thing that I kept saying to myself was, I have to be successful because I don't want to come home and find my clothes in the front yard.
Yeah.
And Barbara said, I'm not going to do that to you. And I said, I need to think you will.
Yeah.
And we joke about that. But today, and Barbara and I can joke about this a little bit today, 27 years later, but that was a good place for me to be, to have that fear that I would have that initially. But in reality, recovery has been freeing to me. It's allowed me to be a much better version of me that I'm much happier with. So as a result, I pursued a physical fitness journey and an emotional fitness journey and a spiritual fitness journey that really enhanced my life. And as a sober person, I see the world more clearly, obviously, but I think in a way that's more full of love and for people that are around me that I care about.
Well, you have the capacity to think about other people because
Right.
you're not spinning all of those plates.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so instead of all thinking about me and how I was going to navigate all this stuff. So, did you feel the same type of freeing?
Not at first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at first you're terrified.
Yeah. At first you're terrified. And honestly, I think some of the perception is like you see this alcoholic or addict and it's like, oh, let's just take the alcohol and drugs away and like they'll just be better. And I was worse. It was hard for me to know when to drink water. I had just lived a certain way for so long that I really didn't know what to do with myself anymore. One of the hardest times for me was just at night when it was just time to sit down and, watch TV or something. Like I was so used to the nighttime being when I could really, go off the deep end, that I had to keep myself so busy for the first 3 months was just very intense. After 5 o'clock, I didn't know what to do with my life. But after I got through, the first 6 to 9 months, I just started to feel very peaceful about what was going on. There wasn't, 20 plates in my life that I had to keep spinning because if they stopped spinning, then people would notice what was really going on with me. Not like they didn't notice, but I thought they didn't. But my buddy, he said, there's this line they say in the recovery community sometimes, you're like, my best day in drinking is worse than my worst day. And I don't really like that. But if you were to ask me, if I met someone from my old life, they're like, how is it? I'd be like, it's great. I wouldn't say it's just amazing because you're still having to be alive. And
we still have life.
Yeah, you still have life.
And life has ups and downs and so forth.
But my capacity for dealing with everything is just so much greater than it used to be. So I would say that things that used to overwhelm me don't anymore. I respond really well to stress and I feel very capable and calm when things happen. So I would just say dealing with everyday life is honestly pretty easy. compared to what it was, for sure. But I think having gone through that, there is also this sense of peace that whatever is going to come my way, that I'll be able to handle. So I definitely am free.
You know, one of the things that I think I learned and through and very early on in my recovery is that to trust God's will, whatever that is, but to trust that, because Jack's will wasn't working very well for me.
Yeah.
So it's almost by default, let's try God's will and trust God. And by doing that, because I know I can just screw things up.
Yeah.
So, and so anything that I accomplish or whatever, I basically attributed it to God helping me to do that. You know, when I'm doing something for someone else, God is helping me to do that, to help someone to do that. Everything I've done in my work for our clients and everything like that, I think it's because God has allowed me to do that. And part of my becoming a financial advisor was in the early in the recovery phase of my sobriety, because I was a road warrior before, which isn't a very good life, to be on the road 150 nights a year for
terrible.
an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons I wanted to get off the road, because I was doing acquisition deals and working on things of that nature, and it was a high flying type life. And in my sobriety, I wanted to get off the road and do that. And becoming a financial advisor was just part of that journey. So that's been a true blessing. But I do think it's because God has allowed me to make those changes in my life. And then now I can help serve and other people in that way.
Yeah.
So I guess my message to everybody out there is that if you have an issue or something like that, I hope you'll reach out to me privately or something like that. I'd be glad to help you and share ideas or even just listen to you if you have doubts or anything of that nature. It's a very challenging and difficult thing to go through, but there is hope. And I would suggest that you seriously, give consideration to changing your life, because you can and you can make it better. And so if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at jack@eaterfw.com. That's eaterfinancialwellness.com. And or my cell phone number is 205-613-4994. Be glad to chat with you on this or anything. If you want to see JT, you need to go to Iron Tribe Fitness at the Mothership in Homewood, Alabama.
Come by
and see him and meet him and maybe even sign up to change your life in a physical fitness form of way. I've been at Iron Tribe, Barbara, and I've been there almost 14 years. And I will tell you, I can't imagine my life without Iron Tribe in it.
Well, we can't imagine not having you.
Well, thank you. So anyway, my hope and prayer is if you know someone that needs help or if you need help, feel free to reach out. We'll be glad to help.
All right. Thank you to both of you. And thank you for listening today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time, I'm Wendy McConnell.
Thank you for listening to the BAMCAM podcast with Jack Burnette and Allison Castellano from Eater Financial Wellness, a financial advisory practice at RFG Advisory. To get in touch with us, visit today's show notes or go to our website at www.eaterfinancialwellness.com. That's ITER financialwellness.com. And please click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available.
Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice. nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Information here may be provided in part by third-party sources. These sources are generally deemed to be reliable. However, neither our guest nor RFG Advisory guarantee the accuracy of third-party sources. The views expressed here are those of our guest. They do not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, its employees, or its clients. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by RFG Advisory or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives of Private Client Services, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, LLC, RFG Advisory or RFG, a registered investment advisor. Private Client Services and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place. RFG Advisory is an SEC-registered investment advisor. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of RFG by the Commission, nor does it indicate that RFG or any associated investment advisory representative has attained a particular level of skill or ability.